Hello. It is, as of recording, it is January 22nd, and Harper Collins is still on strike. So let's do my makeup and talk about this. Hey guys, it's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. I haven't been talking about this on here, and seeing as this has been going on now for over 50 days, I think it's time that we sit down and just have a little chit chat about Harper Collins and the strike that they have been on. The employees of Harper Collins have been striking, and it is not going anywhere. So this was all sparked by TikTok that I'll show you guys later in the video. But I actually, for the first time, have notes. You can't see it, but I have notes. I have scripted sort of out the general direction of this discussion. So it's still going to be me, so it's going to be a ramble, but it's going to be a slightly more structured ramble. So let's attempt to do this. In case you've somehow missed this, HarperCollins, their union has been on strike for over 50 days. I think we're at like 53 or 54 days as of this recording. And they have a few demands, including higher pay for entry level employees. They want to go from like $45,000 a year to $50,000 a year, which is not a huge increase, actually. Greater commitment to diversifying its workforce and end the union's status as an open shop. And I have this article here that I'm going to pull up because I think it helps explain that particular demand because I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, I'm even like in a union and I didn't know what that meant. So this is from a couple days ago from Hellgate. I don't know if that's a great news source. It's an interview with one of the union reps. So we're going to go with it. So it's been 50 days since the last action in an industry that has in recent years seen workers call for and sometimes win higher pay amidst a broader push for racial equality within publishing. We already went through this, but higher pay for entry level employees, a greater commitment to diversifying the workforce. And here's the part that I think we want to get a little clarity on is end the union's status as an open shop, which so this bars the union from collecting dues and yeah, so we'll talk about dues and all of that. But so this is the only union within publishing, which I think is really interesting that it's under Rupert Murdoch is the only place that's the only publishing house that has a union under it. I just find that very interesting. It's clear that management's trying to wait out this strike for as long as possible and see if they can break. And I'm kind of proud for them, these workers for not breaking. But here's our interview. Okay. There's no update on negotiations. We have not heard from management regarding bargaining since before the strike started in November. So no new bargaining sessions and no up-to-date negotiations. That's abysmal. They haven't even come to the table to talk about anything. We haven't had a single bargaining session since the strike started. And this is as of the 17th of January. This is really sad. Right before the strike and our last bargaining session, we presented new contract proposals that we saw as a comprehensive path towards reaching a settlement, avoiding the strike. Management walked away from that meeting. They left to go on break and then they never came back and they emailed us and rejected our proposal and did not indicate a willingness to continue bargaining. So we're waiting on them. The main tenets of this contract have been around salary and wages, union security, and then putting language around diversity protections into the contract. Our proposal around wages included establishing an entry level salary of $50,000, which is honestly in Manhattan not a lot of money to live off of. Management came in at $46,500, which I know for like a lot of people is a lot of money, but in Manhattan to live on that is almost impossible. It is hard. 2 years ago, they raised the entry level salary to 45 from what had previously been 38, and that's a good jump, but it's still not going to cover your cost of living in or around the city in which you have to work to do these jobs. And here's the union piece. Currently, HarperCollins is an open union shop, which means that when you take a job covered by the union contract, you do not automatically become a member of the union, and you do not pay dues unless you opt into the union membership. They would like to establish what's known as an agency shop, which is essentially when you take a job in the bargaining unit, you are given a window of time by which you will choose whether you want to be a union member or you don't want to be. It still provides a choice, but you would pay agency fees to the union, which would be never more than the amount that the dues are. What it does is it collectively shares the cost of collective bargaining equally among all the people who benefit from having a union contract. And right now we have a membership rate of over 85%. This is something that people already opt into and feel really strongly about. And that she's referring to moving to the agency shop. It would be a fair structure for us. Making this change doesn't cost the company any money, but from their perspective, we believe that they see it as ceding too much power to the union. The only reason they have 85% membership rate is because we have a really organized group of individuals who come together at Harper right now. But everybody moves on eventually and advances in their career, and we want to secure the future of our union for future generations. So that they ask, in New York City, it's pretty rare to have that kind of open shop union contract. Yeah, it's extremely rare. We've talked and heard a lot of politicians who believe that this kind of union shop should be illegal. This happened to our union in the 80s at a time when unions were being busted in the city, and we just want to switch it back. We want to go back to the previous way it was, the way that pretty much all other private sector unions work. It's really unusual. So I think it's really interesting that they don't even have a good union structure. They go on to talk about the open letter from the CEO Brian Murray, who used very overt right to work language. We love to see that in when people have union contracts. It made us angry. It was funny to us because he referred to dues as a substantial amount of money, which was funny to all of us because dues is 1.6% of our pay. It's less than we pay for just about anything else in terms of like taxes, social security, the amount that it costs to ride the subway every month. It's a really small amount that for our lowest paid workers, it pretty much comes out to like one pizza a month. It's a choice that we make, and it's a choice that we're willing to give people. If people politically don't want to be in a union, they don't have to become a member, they don't have to participate in union activities, but you benefit from the protections of the contract. This is huge. If you benefit from the protections of the contract, you should contribute to the costs of maintaining that contract. That's huge, and I agree with that. It was surprising to see just how conservative his language was on the right to work because New York is not a right to work state. This is a union town. This is a union friendly state. We are lucky to be in New York in a lot of ways. But I think that's his personal opinion on it. And it's a shame because his personal stance on this strike is really what is damaging HarperCollins' reputation in the industry with authors and agents and industry professionals. It's interesting because the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, which are also owned by News Corp. Their newsrooms have union structures that are not the same as ours. So it's not a News Corp policy to have an open shop union. In fact, if there was a News Corp policy, we would have an agency shop because that's what the other unions in News Corp have. All of this is very strange. We're going to get into this. My understanding thus far is that he has been trying to treat it as if it's a minor thing and it's creating a real mess for the employees that work for Harper on the inside, HarperCollins authors and agents that are trying to work with Harper. His strategy has been to say publicly that business as usual is continuing and that books aren't being affected, but we know that that's not true. There is a little change memo this week that somebody leaked to us that indicate that more than 50 titles are moving their sale date in the next season. That's because work just is not getting done. All very interesting. I'll link this below if you want to continue reading this article, but I thought that was a really interesting article. What gets me about this whole thing, and we'll get some more into it because I think this all has to do with the struggling finances of HarperCollins overall and the low margins of running a publishing house. But what's interesting to me is that these are not foreign concepts to News Corp, the overarching owner of HarperCollins. And the demands that the union are making in the grand scheme of things are really not that crazy. If you look at like the demands that other unions are making across the city, like the nurses unions, I mean, their demands are significantly higher in terms of overall pay increase, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I saw somewhere, and someone correct me in the comments, but I think I saw somewhere that like the overall amount of money that they have to, like, increase the costs is, like, $1,000,000 or something like that, or not so much. It's like an extra 1,000,000 or 2 every year that increasing these salaries is going to cost, HarperCollins, and if your margins are that tight, like, oh, I don't know, that seems strange to me. But then there was also a Publishers Weekly article recently that discusses how the demands might affect. It talks a lot about the demands in general, but one of the things it touches on is how those demands may affect other publishing houses, especially indie presses. And I thought that that was a really interesting piece of this that I haven't been really thinking about. If HarperCollins Union wins these contracts, how does this affect the smaller indie presses that can't compete for talent because they just don't have the same revenue and to call this talent over. You know, if they can't afford because they're a smaller shop to pay people $50,000 a year, which I don't think is an unreasonable amount, but if you don't have it in your financials because labor costs are high, how are you going to get the talent over there? And then is this just going to ultimately, I'm not saying I don't want people to win their contract. I would like them to win their contract, but will this ultimately hurt indies as like a side effect? And then what is that about? So I want to pull up this because I have some thoughts about this. I don't know. I feel like there needs to be some antitrust stuff going on because my question is, are the big five too big? And have they reduced competition to the point where all small indie shops are just gonna, you really struggle. Being an indie is just gonna be incredibly difficult. Right, so here's the Publishers Weekly. Hopefully you can read this. Maybe you can read that. That might be better. Okay. So this is from around the same time. This is January 18th. So we're only a few days out from this. Who wins in the Harper Collins Union labor dispute? On strike since November 2022, the Harper Collins Union walkout has become a test case for how labor unions could change the publishing business. As HarperCollins labor dispute rolls into a new year, the company's unionized employees strike is now the longest in the union's more than 80-year history at a top publisher. Since the initial walkout on November 10th, the dispute has caught the attention of all publishing sectors, with many anticipating the outcome as a test case for how labor unions could change business operations. But for many publishing industry veterans, whether the change is positive or negative remains to be seen. Indeed, some smaller independent publishers, mostly outside of New York City, are concerned that the public nature of the strike, with wage demands made public, is raising unrealistic financial expectations. Smaller publishing operations can't afford to match wages of the big five publishing companies. Moreover, despite the double-digit profit margins that the publicly traded publishers have posted in recent years, publishing is generally a low-margin business. Sales gains during the initial years of COVID-19 notwithstanding, the industry typically has marginal growth in annual sales and flat is the new up has long been the unofficial business slogan. A lengthy, very public strike only adds to the industry's challenges, with many agents and authors wanting the dispute to be resolved quickly and immediately so the industry can get back to business. So, this is going to go into some more background over it. And I'll link this down below too if you want to read further in that. What I found really interesting, especially about that top bit, is just this idea that maybe Big Five is too big. I think they might be too big, especially if the margins are so low that it makes it very difficult to find talent and pay for talent, especially if you don't have Big Five money. Okay. So, definitely, do people deserve a living wage? Hell yes, people deserve a living wage. You're not going to get me to not say yes to that. People deserve a living wage. However, perhaps these big five companies, are a little too top heavy. And by that, I mean you are paying your top executives way too much money, way too much money, so that you don't have any funds to allocate down to the workers who are actually doing the job and keeping the company running, keeping the books on the shelves, keeping everything going. This the part in the Hellscape article that I just had up before, where they talk about different 50 or so titles having to have their release dates pushed back because no one's doing the work. That's huge. The people that are on strike, these are the legal department, your editing assistants. These are the people that really get these books through the process of publishing or traditional publishing and onto the shelves. They're incredibly important in your ability to actually make money and get your big time executive paycheck. They're incredibly important. They're, in fact, probably a little bit more important than most of the executives that are involved in publishing. So, my question is it too top heavy? Do we need to see a restructuring in the publishing industry with fewer executives and more people down at the bottom, and a redistribution of those funds within the entire corporation so that you actually have more money to give to these employees who are doing the work? Perhaps you don't need so many top level executives. You don't need as many people in the C suite and just below, because they're going to get the big paychecks. And I tried to find the CEO's uh, salary. I couldn't find it. So if anybody knows and has found anything sort of that confirms what he makes every year, please let me know. But I want to just show you guys a couple things here. Okay, so one of the things that I've seen people ask is, what are the imprints of HarperCollins? Because how do I avoid people if I don't know who's here? Like what are they under? Look at all the imprints that are under one of the big fives, and they're not even like tippity top big fives. Uh, there are so many imprints under this. There's so much of publishing that is under the control of HarperCollins. How are the indie spaces going to how are they going to compete? I definitely think that there needs to be restructuring and or something going on within the industry as a whole because it's a little bit crazy. They have eaten up all these small imprints. Is the fate of an indie publishing house really just to be eaten up by a big publisher because that's the only way to survive? I think it might be. It's a little bit sad that that is possibly the only way to survive is to be eaten up by one of the big 5, because you just can't compete. But I think that there's something else going on top of all of this, and why HarperCollins is kind of being treated their union's being a little treated a little differently than maybe other subsidiaries of News Corp. So I wanna play this TikTok that I stumbled upon. It's a little bit old, but I think that it's important. It's a guy kind of breaking down the financial, statements from, I believe, end of year. He'll say in the thing, but he read the transcript from the earnings call for News Corp, and it talks a lot about HarperCollins, especially, you would consider that because I mean, that makes sense because they're the ones that are on strike. But this, I don't know. I just think that it's all very interesting. And I think this is all very political. And at the end of the day, like everything else, this is all about money.
So I've been following the HarperCollins strike for a while now, and what doesn't make sense to me is that the union is asking for literal peanuts, like minimum salary raise from 45 to 50K. I was actually shocked.
Yeah, this is what's from the beginning has seemed very weird to me. Like there's more going on here, because if they're not asking for anything, honestly, look at what NYSNA, the New York Nurses Union, is asking for over at Montefiore. Look what Westchester Med just won in their contract bid. There are in and around Manhattan some union disputes that are very public that have been going on that did not take 50 days. Now I understand that like nursing strikes are a little bit different than publishing strikes. They tend to wrap those up very quickly because it's about people's lives, not just about books. But like I mean, like life or death lives, not just about books. But what they're asking for is so nominal. It's crazy. This has made it to like 54 days.
To learn how grotesquely underpaid they were. So it's clear why the workers are striking, but why is HarperCollins staying course? And it probably means that they've made a calculation so far and said this is still doable for them. So I wanted to take a look at what the heck is happening. So I took a look at News Corp's last earnings call transcript. You know, HarperCollins is owned by News Corp, the empire of Rupert Murdoch, and their performance is listed here. So basically, HarperCollins experienced a revenue contraction, meaning they just made less money last quarter. And this, they say, was attributed to certain inventory, rules being changed from Amazon or something like that. So then the CFO of News Corp basically says the first quarter of fiscal 2023 presented some challenges, particularly at HarperCollins. This is really bad for HarperCollins because now you've been named as the problem child in front of the board and the shareholders. Essentially, they lit a fire under the executive.
I think HarperCollins is becoming the scapegoat for some of the issues in the News Corp portfolio. And they are going to wait out this strike for as long as possible because giving in is going to change their financials way more than I think anybody realizes. Now, this is all my conjecture. I don't freaking know. These are my opinions.
Executives, especially the CEO, Brian Murray at HarperCollins. And then there's also this bit by News Corp CEO who said, "We are absolutely focused on cost control at HarperCollins and the imperative to improve margins in these challenging conditions." So the CEO of News Corp is basically.
Did you hear that? We're in a backup.
And the imperative to improve margins in these challenging conditions. So the CEO of News Corp is basically saying we need to cut costs at HarperCollins, and labor is a big part of costs. So essentially, what I think is happening is that the leadership at HarperCollins thinks that if they accept the union's demands, then that will be seen as a defeat, and that could initiate things like, leadership change or restructuring. And this is not something I think, the leadership at HarperCollins probably wants, especially Brian Murray, the CEO.
No leadership wants restructuring because restructuring means you or your friend, look left or right, one of you is getting fired. You are leaving with a severance package. You need to go find a new job. Nobody at the top wants restructuring. Mm-mm. Somebody at News Corp might want it, but nobody at the top of HarperCollins wants restructuring because restructuring means that the people that make the money, the people with the cushy jobs, are going to be the people that go because they are expensive. And whoever is restructuring them is going to bring things in and is going to shake it all up. Nobody wants to lose their cushy job.
Now, what could turn this is that eventually the costs of the strike outweigh the costs of accepting the union's demands, and they can, present that to the board and the shareholders and say this is actually the right decision. But who knows if that will even happen? It may never happen, and they might just lay off all the unionized workers and say, well, we saved money by firing all those people. That's what you wanted, right? And everyone congratulates themselves on a job well done on their earnings call. And what really bothers me is that all of this shows that HarperCollins serves shareholders more than it serves readers or writers, for that matter, at the end of the day. And really, it's all the more reason why, if you care about the publishing industry's future, we should all back the union.
So, what can we do? Because I think that earnings call is incredibly telling. I think that HarperCollins is having some issues. I think that News Corp knows they're having issues. I think they'll be curious to see what happens in the next earnings call because having such a public thing going on about wages is not good. It's not a good look. Okay. And I would be curious to see how this all plays out. I would not be surprised. And I really hope it doesn't get there. So we're going to talk about what we can all do to kind of help. But I would not be surprised if they end up somehow firing all these union workers, finding a way to get rid of all the unionized workers and restructure the bottom instead of restructuring their top heavy structure. Because restructuring the bottom of the company doesn't affect the executives. Restructuring the top of the company is going to affect the executives. And no executive will willingly shoot themselves in the foot like that. So, what can we do to help? What can we as readers and reviewers and people in general do to help the union? I'm going to link the union's Twitter account because they post so much good stuff over there to give information about the strike, to tell people how they can help, et cetera, et cetera. So I am going to link that in the description below. I'm going to link as much stuff as possible, but let's go and look at a couple of the things that they have shared on their Twitter that will help you understand what can be done to help the union out. So these are their do's and don'ts for supporting the union. Hopefully, you can see that clearly. I think you can. Do's and don'ts for holding the picket line with all Harper imprints. Do withhold submissions. Do withhold reviews. I can say that I think that I have probably screwed up and put out some reviews. It's sometimes a minefield trying to figure out what imprints are a part of HarperCollins. So I'll put that up again, and I will link to all of this is in their Twitter account, so you can find these all over there. But yes, do hold with reviews. Do not take new work from HarperCollins. If you're a freelancer, keep that in mind. Do not break your existing contracts. Do let HarperCollins know that you support the strike. There are often some letters and petitions that go around. So it's helpful to follow their Twitter account so you can sign those petitions and support them that way. So you can put your voice behind the HarperCollins employees that are striking. So you can put your voice behind the union. And then the last thing I want to share over here is actually this here. So there is a strike fund, a donation platform that helps with the workers that are on strike. Being on strike for 50 days is a really long time to be on strike. I will try to find a specific link for the fund and put that outside of the Twitter so you don't have to go digging for it. But it is hard to be on strike. It is hard to stand the line and stay in the picket line and do this because the people that are usually striking are the people that need every penny that come in. They do not have a lot of margin themselves to not get paid, to not do certain things. So they are holding the line and they are attempting to ensure a better workplace for themselves and for the people who come in after them. These things tend to snowball and affect other unionized groups, in different industries, in the same industry, etc. If you yourself are part of a union in any industry, I would hope that you will be supporting this union strike as well in some way, whether you're voicing it in your stories or signing petitions, or if you have the means to support through the strike fund. I know we don't all have money. It's 2023. I know that we're all freaking broke, but if you've got it, there are people that are trying to make things better and they need help. So once again, I just want to put up the imprints so that you guys have them here in front of you. And if you want to like pause, screenshot, whatever, these are all the imprints that are under Harper Collins. Take a look at them. You know, buy the books. We're not saying don't buy the books. Nowhere in this does it say don't buy Harper Collins books, because now you're hurting the authors. And this is not about hurting the authors. We want to help the authors. It's about not promoting Harper Collins. So don't share your reviews. Don't try to bring more people to Harper Collins. It's this is tough because we don't want to hurt authors, but we want to support the union. So definitely let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. Check out the links I'm putting in the description. I'd love to know all your thoughts. I'd love to know what you think about the actual financial structure of or financial state of HarperCollins and what might be actually going on behind the scenes. Because I have a feeling there's some like I think there's some fires going on that are bigger than just what's happening with the union, and the union going on strike is like exposing HarperCollins for exposing some of their issues to a public stage that perhaps they didn't want. Hopefully that made some sense. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that this is coherent. I did try really hard to make it kind of more thought out than I normally do when I'm reacting to things. And yeah, I appreciate you all being here. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed and if you would like to see more content. If you'd like to support the channel more, there is a Patreon. There's a link down below. We do a monthly book club. This month we are reading briefly A Delicious Life, which I will be starting soon. We will be discussing it in the discussion board on my Patreon. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me. Trying to find another way to say this, but I think we were meant to be.